All right, happy Monday, everybody. This week we're going to be talking about the lunar cycle. So if you can just follow along, watch this video. You can use this to help you complete your assignments for this week. All right, so the lunar cycle. Some of the questions you're going to be able to answer when we're all done with these slides is why does the moon look different every night? And then also, can you make predictions about the moon's appearance? So can you look up at the sky and predict in 7 days, this is what the moon's going to look like? So, vocabulary for the lunar cycle, this is a change in the appearance of the moon as it makes one full revolution around Earth. All right, so the moon revolves around Earth, and as it does this, the phases change. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about each of these different phases. If you follow along, and you can see the red arrow points to the phase that we're looking at. Real quick, this outer portion, all right, so these images show the phases as they appear from Earth. And then right here on the inside, these show where the light is hitting the moon based off of the position of the sun. So the sunlight is coming from the right side of this image. So our first moon phase is the new moon. So the first phase of the moon, and it is lit, and it appears unlit from Earth. The moon at this point is in between the sun and Earth. So here's the sun, here's Earth. This is the portion that is lit. This is the portion that is unlit. So what you'll see is this portion, which means that from Earth, you'll see a new moon that appears like this. Next, we have a waxing crescent. All right, so you can see that we are moving counterclockwise. For a waxing crescent, the lighted part of the moon as seen from Earth is increasing. The light on the right is new and bright. All right, so that can be kind of a little saying to help you remember waxing crescent. And think about the shape of a crescent roll. All right, so this would be kind of the shape of what a crescent roll would appear to be, or appear to look like. So you can see that the light is beginning to grow on the right. This is your view from Earth. This is what it would look like if we were out in space looking at the Earth, sun, and moon. Next, we have the first quarter moon. All right. The moon is 1/4 of the way through its cycle. All right, so if it's 1/4 of the way through, that's how it got its name, the first quarter. From the Earth, it appears to be half lit on the right. So on Earth, if we were to be looking at this phase, the right side would be lit and the left side would be unlit. And then it also would appear the same from space, because remember, the sun is over here on the right. Then we have waxing gibbous. So from the Earth, the moon appears to be more than half lit on the right. Notice a trend here. The light is growing on the right during waxing crescent to first quarter to waxing gibbous. So the light is shaped like a football. So you can kind of see here, you got somewhat of a football shape. All right, so notice the trend here as we're going around the first half of the different moon phases here from new to eventually full moon, the light is growing on the right. All right, so then we have the full moon. So from the Earth, the moon appears fully lit. So the Earth is between the sun and the moon. So you have the sun here, Earth here, and here is our moon. Notice that the half lit portion is facing Earth. So what we'll see is the complete lit portion of the moon. So we see it as a full moon. And then you'll see as we move from a full moon to waning gibbous last quarter and waning crescent, the darkness begins to grow on the right side. So we have a waning gibbous. So from the Earth, the moon appears to be more than half lit on the left. The light part is now decreasing. All right, so initially from new moon to full moon, the lit portion of the moon was increasing. Now it is decreasing. Then we have the third or last quarter moon. The moon is 3/4 of the way through its cycle. From the Earth, it appears to be half lit on the left. All right, so here we have the last quarter. All right, and this is what we'll view from Earth. And it's half lit on the left, where at first quarter, it's half lit on the right. And then we have a waning crescent. So the light part of the moon as seen from Earth is decreasing on the left. All right, notice that's the trend, decreasing on the left where it was once growing on the right. So the shape of the light is a crescent. So here we have that crescent shape again. Notice that it's on the opposite side of the waxing crescent. All right, so what we've seen here is as we're going from a new moon to a full moon, light is increasing on the right. So you would have a waxing crescent, a first quarter, and a waxing gibbous. Once we hit the full moon, we have the light decreasing on the left. So then you have the full moon to the waning gibbous, to the last quarter, to the waning crescent, and then we are back to the new moon. So if we were to be filling out this interactive notebook, which we won't be, you're asked to shade the moons to indicate which area is light and which is dark from space. Okay, so that's very important that we're talking about from space. So if we have the sun here, Earth right here, well, the sun's light is going to come from the right side, so the Earth would be light on the right. And then if you go around and look at the different phases, or not even phases, but where the light is shown on the moon, all right, this is what it would appear to look like from space. All right, from Earth, it's going to appear much differently. So now you're going to shade the moons to indicate how we would see the moon if we were standing on Earth. All right, so now we're on Earth, we're not in space. Here would be our new moon. All right, remember, because when the moon is in between the Earth and the sun, this side would be lit, this side would be dark. Well, if we're on Earth, we're only going to see the unlit portion. And then as we move through our phases, remember the light is growing on the right when we're going from a new moon to a full moon. So we have our waxing crescent, then our first quarter, then our waxing gibbous, and then our full moon. All right, so the light is growing on the right all the way until we get to our full moon. Now for the full moon, remember that the Earth is in between the moon and the sun, so we only see the full lit portion, which is why it appears to be a full moon. And then as we continue to go around from a full moon back to a new moon, so we have our waning gibbous, our third or last quarter, and waning crescent. So remember that the light on the left is starting to decrease as we work our way back to a new moon. Now, which direction does the moon revolve around the Earth? I said this earlier, but we move in a counterclockwise from this viewpoint. It's counterclockwise. So approximately how many days does it take to go from one moon phase to another? Well, it takes 3.5 days to go from one phase to another. All right, so if you're going from a new moon to a waxing crescent, it'll take 3.5 days. How long would it take to complete 1/4 of a revolution? Well, if it's 3.5 days from here to here, it's probably another 3.5 days from our waxing crescent to our first quarter. So it's about 7 days. And then approximately how many days does it take to complete the entire cycle? For the entire cycle, it is 29.5 days, so roughly about a month. So now we'll look here at these quick action questions, and we will try to predict the phases. So here we have a phase, the light's on the right, so it must be a waxing. All right, now we need to determine, is it a waxing gibbous, a first quarter, or a waxing crescent? Well, if more than half of it is lit and it's a football shape, that means that this is a waxing crescent to a full moon. So what comes after the full moon would be a waning gibbous, because after the full moon, the light on the left is starting to decrease. Here we have a first quarter with the light on the right. Here we have a waxing gibbous. So what comes before the two? All right, so if the light's on the right, light is decreasing on the right. So here's our waxing crescent. Here's our first quarter. Here's our waxing gibbous. Here with this image, we have our first quarter. And then in between, well, that's what we're trying to figure out. So here on the far right, we have our full moon. So we're going from a first quarter to a full moon. What comes in between that? Well, the light on the right is going to continue to grow. So then we would have our waxing gibbous. All right. And then here we have light on the left, which means it's a third quarter here. So then we have to figure out what comes before and after the third quarter or last quarter phase. What those would be is a waning gibbous and a waning crescent. All right, so because remember, on a waning gibbous, the light is decreasing on the left. So first we would have our waning gibbous, all right, light on the left, it's decreasing, so then we would go from a waning gibbous to a last quarter or third quarter, and then going from a third quarter, light is still decreasing on the left, we would be going to a waning crescent. And then eventually after this waning crescent, we would be back to a new moon. So you can also look at a calendar and predict what the phases are going to be. So if we have on Sunday, the first day of the month, we have a first quarter, right? We know it's a first quarter because the light is on the right. 3 days later, we can predict what that moon phase is going to be. So after a first quarter, we need to figure out, well, if light is on the right, it's continuing to grow. So from a first quarter, you would go to a waxing gibbous. And then from a waxing gibbous, we can look at roughly 3.5 days. The light is on the right, so we know it's continuing to grow. We would have a full moon. Then roughly 3 days later, the light is starting to decrease on the left, so we now have a waning gibbous. And then 3 to 3.5 days later, after a waning gibbous, remember the light is decreasing on the left, so we would have a third or last quarter moon. And then as it decreases, we have our waning crescent, back to a new moon. And then after 3.5 days from the new moon, well, the light is going to start growing again on the right. So we would have our waxing crescent. And then from our waxing crescent, roughly 3.5 days later, we're back to our first quarter. So you can see over this month-long period, we've gone from our first quarter all the way through the different phases, right? Roughly every 3.5 days, these phases change. And then we end the end of the month with the first quarter again. Now, as you go from one phase to the next, all right, light is continuing to grow, all right? So it doesn't go straight from a first quarter to a waxing gibbous, all right? Over time, the light continues to be added to the moon on Monday and then Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we're officially at a waxing gibbous. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, light is continuing to grow until we reach a full moon. All right, so it doesn't just happen overnight. It changes each day until we get to that 3.5 day mark. So hopefully by now you are able to describe the moon phases by their shape, predict the phases of the moon, and be able to label a blank lunar cycle diagram. If you have any questions about today's slides, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section or email me. Have a great day.